Hey everybody, it's Tatiana with Back to Facts. I'm trying something new here. I've been wanting to talk about the divide recently because it's so big and it's so crazy and people are so incredulous and they're so angry at their friends, loved ones, and family. And I think many people do have family this way, even if they have cut them out of their families. Let's talk about a national strategy. A lot of people who are very unhappy with Trump talk about the lack of a national strategy. They feel like 200,000 people would still be alive if Trump had had a national strategy. So did we expect to have 0 deaths from COVID? Did we think we had that power? Because as far as I knew, the models were predicting millions of people dying even in the United States. Now you might say, well, why is it that other countries have fewer deaths? We have the most deaths. Well, I can pretty much guarantee 100% China has more deaths than we did. Just logically, they're the epicenter, and we heard about a lot of reports that were then suppressed by China about the deaths. Now let's talk about the death rate per capita. We are lower than the UK. We are lower than Belgium. We are on a par with, I believe, Germany. Don't quote me. I know Peru is really high. But I have to say, it really matters how you count the deaths. Up until recently, Britain, the UK was counting supposed deaths just like us. Wait a minute, you say. We count suspected deaths here in the United States as the same as laboratory-confirmed deaths? Yes, we do. The World Health Organization has 2 different codes for deaths that are laboratory confirmed and deaths that are suspected, meaning the symptoms appear to be COVID, the doctor thinks that they had COVID, and so the doctor puts it on the death certificate, and that's good enough for the CDC. A few months ago, the UK started counting laboratory confirmed cases only, and they had to remove a bunch of deaths from their death total. Then I think there was some new kerfuffle that happened that I didn't really look into, but it has to do with their death count, and maybe somebody said, hey, wait a minute, this is too low. Not sure about that. However, we're still not comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Next, we all know about the CDC reporting that only 6% of cases did not have comorbidities. Well, that's good news, actually. And it was spun to be a conspiracy theory because what happened was the right took it and ran with it in a way that was a little bit extreme, saying that the official death count is only 9,000 or 6% of the 200 and something thousand it was at the time. So you can't really say that 6% of all the death count are the only deaths. But you do need to zoom in on the details. For instance, there were roughly 6,000 deaths that were either poisonings or intentional, unintentional injury. I kid you not. And cancer, late-stage cancer. The list goes on and on and on. It's not just grandma who's okay except she caught this coronavirus from somebody who wouldn't wear a mask. A mask on you will protect someone from you, and a mask on the other person will protect them as well. If they are in your area, they're close to you, and let's say you're talking and you sneeze on them. I don't want someone to sneeze on me. I don't think any of us do. So I'm okay wearing masks when in close quarters and inside, like in a store. I don't really wear masks outside or to exercise, though. I think that the mask issue has actually stolen a lot of energy and air out of the room regarding this whole thing. What we really need to be talking about is, could we have prevented all of these deaths? Absolutely not. Those who were near death are counted. Those who anything would have pushed them over the edge, like a cold or regular pneumonia, are counted. And right now, we're not even sure about excess deaths. We don't know exactly whether we're going to have excess deaths of 200,000 yet, because the final results haven't come in. But the experts do say that it takes a while for the death certificate data to come in from various different places. So we have to wait and see. But I think all of the outrage, the definitive nature of the reporting is really damaging to our country. Back to the modeling. The modeling was millions dead. So I wonder, why are we so outraged about 200,000? We have to remember that while all of those lives matter, they were preventable at some point decades ago. And what we have to remember too is that as far as respiratory disease, heart disease, diabetes, and obesity, we are second only to China. As far as a sedentary lifestyle, I believe we are number 1. That's what happens with prosperity. Is this the fault of the current president? Please ask yourselves this. Does this make sense? Does the president being optimistic about the country getting out of this pandemic, does that cause people to die? I know there's going to be a woman at the vice presidential debate tonight whose father, she says, died because of President Trump. Does President Trump wanting to get the country moving again prematurely, okay, does that cause people to act recklessly? Well, not when he has Dr. Fauci there speaking, Dr. Birx. All along, the coronavirus task force has been telling people about the regulations. Social distancing was completely endorsed by Trump. He expressed regret that the economy had to shut down, but he did it. So I ask you, was his optimism, did that cause 200,000 deaths? Sure, he said a few things in the beginning, like it's just one person from China, but you gotta understand, things are really important in context and at the time. The very first person who came in from China, he got better pretty fast, actually. I think he was in the hospital for 10 days, but he already showed improvement by day 6. I read the study in the New England Journal of Medicine. And guess what they gave him? They gave him supplemental oxygen and remdesivir. Because remdesivir, which was developed for Ebola, had been shown in the lab to inhibit SARS-CoV-1, the first SARS virus. So when we talk about a lack of a national strategy, I'm really wondering what we are talking about. Are we talking about the fact that the president mentioned a few things, a few therapies he was hearing about that were unproven, but people had the right to try with until the governors forbade them to do so. There is a school of thought that says that double-blind randomized controlled trials aren't humane when you have a deadly disease. So you would think they would aggressively pursue these randomized double-blind controlled studies. But what I notice is that because of a very, very, very tiny percentage of people who are at risk when using remdesivir and hydroxychloroquine, because of that, they halted all the double-blind randomized placebo-controlled studies. That was because of some information that was really not solid. In fact, most of the studies that claimed hydroxychloroquine was highly dangerous, they were retracted anyway. Also, the dosages were too high. Almost as if someone was deliberately trying to make the study fail, which I know sounds so kooky. I can't explain it. All I know is that the studies that were trying to smear and bury hydroxychloroquine and remdesivir, they are really Mickey Mouse when you really zoom in on it. So I guess they count on people not zooming in on it. The risk of heart problems with hydroxychloroquine, that was such an infinitesimal, tiny percentage of the population who would be eligible to receive the drug. And the Mayo Clinic issued a guidance back in April instructing people how to screen for it when administering hydroxychloroquine. And the Mayo Clinic was saying that it was imperative we use hydroxychloroquine as emergency use because people were going to die. So all the studies that I saw that were being conducted, they just went into limbo in recruitment. And when I tried to get information on it, I didn't hear back from any of the scientists. Sadly, I believe many of those deaths, there's somebody who should be blamed for them, but it ain't the president. I'm wondering what's going to happen to the careers and reputations of the people that buried the therapies when everything finally comes out, if it does. But there seems to be an almost gleeful desire to keep the country in lockdown, to keep the pandemic going. I saw this before the pandemic even hit the United States. I saw people looking at the models and they seemed very excited. And I don't really understand this. I mean, I know that we're living in a dystopia right now, but really, if you think about it, the only common denominator between the two groups who don't understand each other is the information they receive. Information is the common denominator. Information is causing us to hate each other. That's why I started back to facts. You may laugh. You may say, well, science is on the side of Fauci, of course. He's been there forever. And you say, wear your mask. That's all we can do. That can save more lives going forward. Whatever happened to an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? It's been shown that people have gotten better all over the world by taking one of these antivirals in conjunction with antibiotic because there's always opportunistic bacteria, especially when you have pneumonia, which is what almost everybody does end up getting if they don't catch COVID-19 early. I shouldn't be the only one saying this. And in fact, I'm not. Remember all those doctors? They had jobs in the ER. A lot of them were from my hometown here in Los Angeles. And a lot of them were discredited, saying that they weren't even doctors. I mean, just censored, discredited, fired. So it makes you wonder, what about the other ones that are saying there's no cure, there's no cure? There was a woman, an internist in Washington, D.C., doctor who told USA Today that there is no therapy for people in the early stages of the disease. That is criminal. That's criminal negligence. The entire system of scientific studies has been infiltrated and controlled for a very, very, very long time. And you might think this is weird, but the main publishers, they get money from governments. So even when something is double-blind, controlled and all that, the parameters matter, the question that they're asking matters, the group that they use matters, the methodology matters, it all matters. And what people think is that they think this is just an absolute gold standard, and it's gold, when really studies have been retracted through pressure, and studies have also been pushed through pressure and money. Yes, unfortunately, even science has been corrupted by people who want to have cronies and influence rather than have ability, inspiration, talent, and frankly, integrity. So, as far as the lack of a national strategy, unfortunately, all through this, the president has been sabotaged by the media, by the scientific journals, and by those who are at universities who don't want to lose their jobs. You know who didn't care about losing his job? The French guy who discovered the HIV virus. He even said on French TV, "I'm retired, I can say what I want." And he said that virus is man-made. Luc Montagnier discovered the HIV virus, and there was a huge dispute with the United States. In fact, President Reagan had to get involved, and they ended up having a compromise wherein Dr. Gallo shared the prize, the Nobel Prize. He shared it with Dr. Luc Montagnier, and that is who said that COVID-19 is a man-made virus. He said on French TV that it even had parts of the HIV virus. This is exactly what the whistleblowing doctor from China recently told our media about. Luc Montagnier said specifically that he was not afraid because he was retired. He had worked in China also for many years. I give you this example because I want to convey to you how easy it is to fall in line when your job is on the line, sadly. I'm not accusing any individual scientist. I think most of the people that are supporting the permanent government line, as in CDC, those people may not be directly involved, and therefore they're not looking at everything that's available to them. They're trusting the media and building their scientific expertise upon what they assume to be established facts from the media. That's pretty easy to happen. Another thing I just wanted to mention before I wrap this up is that you wonder, well, why aren't they counting suspected COVID deaths differently than laboratory confirmed? Or why aren't they confirming all deaths via a lab test? Well, every hospital is different, and then some people die at home. They don't die in a clinical setting, and it's harder to administer a test. But in a hospital, autopsies cost money, and there can be a backlog. So they probably also want to save whatever tests they have for the living. The PCR test is not as easy to produce or to examine as an antibody test, which just uses the blood. I wanted to mention that because it does seem really incredible, doesn't it? All this seems incredible. With that, I will leave you to your thoughts. Stay tuned. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a like and tap the bell for notifications. As well as, most importantly of all, keep calm and share complete facts. Until next time, signing off.